They might talk about humor, music, film, books, football and box sets, exercise and maybe even food, trivia and sport, politics and health, sometimes well-being too. On the Life with Brian. On the Life with Brian.
Hello to listeners old and new. Welcome to Life with Brian with me, Mark, Matthew, and obviously Brian McClare. How are you both? Have you been up to anything exciting?
Hello, Matthew. Hello, Mark.
Yeah, we had the joys of visiting Blackpool the other day, didn't we, Brian?
We did very much so, yeah. We had a sportsman's evening in the Winter Gardens. I think that's I've now achieved everything that I used to dream of when I was wandering to school. Particularly when we came back out and passing the statue of Morecambe and Wise. So that was one of the things that, along with playing football, that I always wanted to do.
Well, we've got a bit of a special episode this week because we want you to cast your mind back 31 years to before the Premier League revolution even, and to the 20th of October 1990 and a First Division clash between Manchester United and Arsenal at Old Trafford. United were the FA Cup holders and would finish the season winning the European Cup Winners' Cup, while George Graham's Gunners would finish the campaign picking up their second league title in 3 seasons, losing just once, largely due to their formidable back four and David Seaman in goal, conceding only 18 league goals throughout. On duty at left-back for Arsenal that day, as he was for more than a decade, was Nigel Winterburn, who, I'm pleased to say, is our special guest today. Nigel, how are you? Thanks very much for coming on.
Very well, thank you. Thank you for, as I just said earlier, for inviting me on. It's great to look back over some of the battles, if you like, between Manchester United and Arsenal, and it would be great as well to hear what Brian has to say about the things. But as I was just saying to you, I just absolutely lived for those games because they were so intense. For me, they were what football was all about.
What I discovered, Nigel, is that we, apart from the normal things like sleeping and breathing and eating, that we've got a hell of a lot in common.
Far away.
You were born on the 11th of December 1963.
That is true.
3 days after me.
Ah, there you go, see.
So we're almost astrological twins.
Is that why we clashed?
For my same kind of personality. We both, when we were younger players and before we became sort of associated with a particular position, we both played midfield.
True. Yes.
You were at Birmingham City and didn't make an appearance. I was at Aston Villa and didn't make an appearance.
This is getting a bit spooky.
You've got 2 FA Cup Winners' medals, so have I. You've got a Cup Winners' Cup medal, so have I. Both of us have been sacked by Blackburn. We both had the wonderful memory of meeting a certain Nelson Mandela. We've got the same favourite dinosaur, a pterodactyl. And we were both released by Ron Saunders.
We have a lot in common there.
There you go.
That's too much homework.
No.
It's very spooky.
Yeah. Do you remember what Ron Saunders said to you? You know, because Jim Smith had given you a 2-year contract, didn't you? In Birmingham, I think Birmingham was the team you supported as a kid.
Well, as a kid, I was actually a Leeds United supporter,
fan, right?
But obviously being from the, I was from the Midlands, but I just think I just sort of latched. Leeds were successful that team. I don't know why I didn't pick, Coventry, Villa, Birmingham, but Leeds was my team. But yeah, I remember that very well because once I joined Birmingham under Jim Smith, first season, well, I call it apprenticeship then. I did very, very well. Got a pro contract at the end of that first season, and then it was all looking good. Jim Smith was still in charge at the start of the second season, and then Mark Dennis and Pat van der Houw were injured. And Jim called me in, and I was going to be making my debut. I think it was Brighton away. So I did everything, all the team tactics on the Friday. And then on the Saturday morning, he called me at the hotel and just said to me, look, I've had a little think. I'm going to play Archie Gemmill at left back. It's maybe just a little bit too inexperienced at this moment in time. From there on, it all went downhill. He got sacked. Ron Saunders came in. He brought a young lad in with him came in. I think it was from Manchester City. I can't actually remember his name now, but he basically just got what was the reserve team into a room and just said, at the end of the season, you'll all be gone. That was pretty much it. You're not good enough. I've brought someone in who I want to, who I think is the standard of the club. I just really was saying he's better than you are. But that was it. That was the end of conversation. And once that season finished, obviously I was released with, I think there must have been 12 or 13 players released. And then I called Jim Smith back up, who was then at Oxford, and just asked if I could go pre-season training with them for the following season. And that's really where it started with then Wimbledon coming in for me to do a month's trial with them. So really, that's where it all sort of started to progress very, very quickly for me with Wimbledon coming in and then getting my opportunity with them.
I was going to say, Ron Saunders is seen as a bit of a dour character these days, and he was at the time as well. I mean, you both played under him. I mean, was it a case of what you saw is what you got with Ron, or did he have? Well,
to be quite honest with you, I didn't know him that well. I didn't have a lot because obviously I was still in the reserves then, which he came in as manager, so I didn't have a lot of time with him. I didn't, I don't remember a great deal. Just that basically that meeting where it was just like, you're out of here, and at the end of the season, that's it. We're not going to offer you any other contract. So I don't really know him as a person really to make that judgment on. But obviously, it hits hard on you very, very quickly when you think you are going to establish yourself at a club and have a chance of coming through and breaking through into the first team, and then all of a sudden from almost 6 months later on, you're being told you're not good enough.
What about you, Brian? How did you?
Well, I mean, he was a first team manager, and he was very successful. The successful team that won the league the season I was there. I didn't have many interactions with him, so the memories that just popped back into my consciousness now were that he always wore Puma King boots, which looked fantastic, all clean and with the white tongues at the time, and the overpowering smell of his aftershave, which was Aramis. That's what original Aramis he used to wear. And unlike you, at least I got a private audience, Nigel, because I got called in. I had been assigned in for Villa in, was it summer 80, and then went back for pre-season in the summer of 81, and I did most of the pre-season, and I got called into his office, and he just basically the end of the conversation was you clearly didn't fancy me. I know that the one of the mentioned before, one of the earliest lessons I learned about football was about opinions. And the opinion of the coach, of the youth team coach at the time, he didn't fancy me, which is and a lesson it's very much taken on board. But he finished off the kind of short, brief conversation we had. Just me in there as a 16, 17-year-old on my own, and he just told me that I could fuck off back to Scotland. So I did. I got the train that afternoon.
I will circulate your name with other clubs.
I don't even know if he said that. He might have said that. I don't think he said that. That's my memory of it. So, and one of the I wanted to ask you about it because I think you were 19 when you made your debut for Wimbledon which I think was in the third division then. So in that period of time, in that day, must have been difficult when he told all of you that you were leaving, and then still had to fulfil your training and your fixtures and all that, and wonder what was going on. So I didn't have that. I just got called in and told I was going. So
yeah, it was. To be fair, it was pretty much towards the end of the season. From what I can remember, it was all. It's a little bit of a blur to me because it was something I wasn't even expecting. It's not as if things had not been going well. You're obviously different manager, but you'd been called up into the first team at such a young age, and you're thinking, obviously, I must be doing something right. You've got to be progressing somewhere. And then, as you say, different manager comes in. I had a couple of injuries as well along that period, and then it was just like, no, you're not wanted anymore. You don't, like exactly what you say. You're not the type of player that I think he's gonna develop at the club, and sort of, as you say, on your merry way, and go and look after yourself and go and find something else, which was disappointed at the time, but maybe in hindsight, when you look back, was a blessing in disguise, because I was living at home still then, but then it forced me to go out and do and search for another club, and then go to Wimbledon, sort of living in digs at times. So it was a completely different lifestyle to what I was used to as well. So I mean, looking back, let's say I'm pleased it was happened, but it was a bit of a shock at the time.
The players are marked. Life with Brian.
I just wanted to say, Brian caught us on the hop there, because I wanted to talk about this, the United rivalry, Arsenal rivalry. But Brian threw a spanner in the works there by mentioning that you met Nelson Mandela as well. Can you just tell us briefly what that was about?
Well, we'd gone over to South Africa, and I believe he'd just been released, and we were playing a game over there, and he was basically like the honorary member who had come in. And before the game, we lined up on the pitch, and out came Nelson Mandela, and it was just like, oh my God, it's Nelson Mandela. He came along the line shaking everybody's hand. But I still got that. Actually, not that long ago, I put that picture up on Facebook, which I don't do. I'm not very active on social media, but I put that up and I've got that photograph at home framed, because it was such a special occasion, but such a iconic man to meet, that it was just incredible.
I know it's something you cherish as well, Brian, isn't it? A meeting.
Yeah, but just to mention a quick thing about your social media, because is there still somebody pretending to be you on social media?
I think there's a lot of people. I know my daughter reported someone about a year ago that they got blocked for a while. But do you know what, Brian? I have no idea on social media. And if there's stuff going out there.
No, I'm not saying about any comments, because there was this thing that made me laugh. There was someone a period of time ago that was pretending to be you, but they were on Twitter, I think it was, and they were writing in Glaswegian slang. And I would just like to say that it definitely wasn't me that was doing this, right?
I'm glad to say you.
In case there's anything popped in your head, you might have thought, I wonder if that could be possibility of that,
Well, I mean, my daughter's told me before that there has been someone, but I wouldn't know how to stop them. I wouldn't know whether they are or not.
In a way,
I just let them get on with it.
In a way, it's just part of the being successful, So the fact you've been successful is that the people want to try.
Imitation is flattery, is it?
Like that, yeah. And it was the same summer, because we were out there at the same time. The first game we played Arsenal, and it was a $70,000 sellout. Played at Ellis Park in Johannesburg, and it was, I think, the game ended up 0-0. But it was wonderful he was the only person one of the very, very few people that I've ever wanted to meet, So to meet him was a very, very special time. And that trip was another one of those trips. Like, there was lots and lots of things happened. You know, there was because we were staying in the same kind of place as the Arsenal players, so there was a few incidents regarding after a couple of nights out. You know, so I believe that one of your colleagues, Nigel, after a few lagers, woke up in a skip. And
you got better story on my team than I have.
But you know why though, Nigel? Because that's when I started writing the diary in the Manchester United magazine. So I started paying attention to a lot more stuff that was going on, you know. So some of my colleagues were there around about the same time. Whatever night, I wasn't party to that. I wasn't part of that night out, but I know that I think Michael Phelan, Man United's assistant manager, might have been involved in as in being there without being in the same rubbish bin, you know. But that's from what I can gather, there was lots of events happened there, you know. So
either Nigel wasn't involved or he's doing a very good job.
Nigel wasn't involved.
I wasn't involved. I only get involved on the football pitch.
No, he wasn't involved in this.
No, it's not me. I'm not big enough and I'm not strong enough to get involved on that side.
Yeah, but you did get sent home from Singapore, though.
I did indeed, yes. Yeah, but the story behind that is not actually as it seems, because actually we got sent home because we played Norwich on the last game of the season. And we travelled up to Norwich and the night before, and what happened was all the lads, as they do, were just sitting down after dinner. We were just sort of talking about what was happening, you know, where we would finish, and then we said, should we go for a walk? And we went for a walk, and as we started to go on this walk, we came sort of round onto this brow of this hill, and we saw this. Well, I suppose it's like a tennis club. So we all walked down around to the tennis club, and then we sat down, and then the guy came out and he said, "Can I get you something?" And like the whole squad was there. I think there was about 13 of us there at the time, and we all looked at each other and said, "Shall we have a beer?" This last game of the season, we can't finish anywhere else, so we all had a beer, and then there was 4 of us left. Everybody else started to disappear. We were just sitting there, and then all of a sudden, George Graham came round the corner. And it was like, well, what should we do? Should we get up and walk off, or should we just sit there? So we just sat there, and he just calmly came over and said, "Enjoying yourselves, lads?" And we were like, "Yes, thank you." And he went, "Just finish your drinks and then go." So we played Norwich. We drew with Norwich. And then we flew out to Singapore the next day. And Gary Lewin, the physio, said, he's fuming. I don't know what he's going to do, but he's literally got something planned for you. So we went away. We flew to Singapore. We played in a game over there, friendly game. And then after that, we were due to go on a 7-day break, fly on to somewhere else for a 7-day break. And then he just sent Ken Fryer down the morning after the game, called the 4 of us down and just said, "There you go. There's your tickets back home." So we got sent back home and got fined 2 weeks' wages. And I don't know to this day, I'm sure he must know now, George Graham, but we were all there. But the other lads didn't want to put their hands up and admit that they were all there as well and put him under a bit of pressure. But so I did get sent home. I can't deny that. But I wasn't on my own. There was 4 of us got caught, but there was 13 of us there, and they didn't have the courage to put their hands up. So it shows you what some teammates are like at times.
Something I'm sure you've never done in the past, Brian, is get sent home from a pre-season tour for any misdemeanors, or you were too lucky, weren't you? You used to get away with things like that.
Well, it just depends, isn't it? You know, yeah, there was a few nights out in South Africa. I do remember that.
Wasn't it every night?
It might have been. I don't know. It could have been, yeah. Which to get away with that with Alex Ferguson and George Graham was quite remarkable. Really,
I think with George, that trip was the first time that he ever let anybody drink through that period when he was with them. It was just lads didn't know what to do. They just all went wild.
I don't know whether George and Alec Ferguson were out enjoying themselves somewhere else, because there was casino, and it was a casino place we were staying at, So
yeah, I think
maybe they were. Maybe that was what it was. They were enjoying themselves somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm sure they would be.
So it was a good pre-season trip from what I can, and to meet Nelson Mandela was incredible.
Yeah, that was the highlight by far. Definitely better than finding someone in a skip, that's for sure.
Life with Brian, life with Brian, life with Brian.
Well, believe it or not, we actually do some preparation on this podcast, which ends up going out the window usually. And although it says here we should start at October the 20th, 1990, that United Arsenal rivalry, which grew in intensity through the 90s and into the 2000s, probably began simmering even earlier than that famous incident, which we'll get to shortly, and certainly before either of you two had joined your respective clubs. It was a game we mentioned in our chat with Viv Anderson from January 87, Matthew, when Norman Whiteside and David Rocastle in particular were heavily involved in a very meaty encounter.
Yeah, I think this is the game that we can say truly started this rivalry between United and Arsenal that obviously went on for many years. It was 86-87 season. Arsenal were on a run of, was it 15 or 20 games unbeaten or something like that? And they came to Old Trafford flying high under George Graham. And United beat them, but I mean, the game will be remembered more for the physical side of it. I think we've shown some YouTube clips in the past of the game, and we spoke to Viv Anderson about it a couple of weeks ago. And I mean, it really was brutal. And in terms of the modern game, you look at some of those tackles that went in, and I mean, they just wouldn't be tolerated today. I mean, David Rocastle was sent off, but I think easily 3 or 4 players could have been sent off and probably should have been sent off. So I know you weren't playing that game, Brian, but you obviously looked back at the footage, and it was a precursor of what was to come a couple of years later, I think.
Yeah, well, I remember speaking to Viv about it, because Viv came to Manchester United the same summer that I came, and also the United players also, because they say that it's the start of Arsenal's run to success that Nigel was a big part of, and then through to the rivalry between the two best English teams for a long period of time, being Arsenal and Manchester United.
There was a famous FA Cup game at a packed Highbury in 1988. Both of your first seasons at United and Arsenal, respectively. Gunners were 2-1 up with almost time up, and United were awarded a penalty in front of a packed North Bank. I just wonder what you both remember about what happened next.
Has scored 4 times from the spot this season. McClare versus Lukic. And so much resting on this next kick of a pulsating cup top. Oh, he's missed it! What a mistake! Alec Ferguson, the manager, with his head in his hands. And a glorious opportunity for United is celebrated there on the North Bank, and Winterburn is getting involved with McClare, and a kick that is sent soaring over the Arsenal crossbar, and perhaps the last chance for United has gone. Poor Brian McClare.
Well, I can quite clearly remember Brian missing, and I'll tell you why, because I actually was doing the West Ham and Manchester United game the other week, and one of the producers there said, "Oh, I was at the game doing some filming at that stage," and he actually showed me the clip, and he actually showed me the penalty, and then me walking past Brian and sort of whispering something in his ear. I mean, it wasn't that long or dramatic. I mean, I've said on many occasions, really, for me, it was unprofessional of what I did, but I just got caught up in the moment, and a couple of times in Man United games, and probably that one really was was obviously was the start of it for me. But then I had the Paolo Di Canio, incident. But I mean, apart from that, I was a pretty good boy for the amount of games that I played. But I actually cannot give you a genuine. I think I just was wrapped up in the old of the occasion. I didn't even realise that it was, like you said there, that the penalty was late in the game. I couldn't actually tell you that, but I don't even know if Brian knows what I said to him, but I generally can't remember. And it wouldn't have been much, but as I just said, really, I've always said, you shouldn't do that to a fellow professional, but it happened, and you can't change it. But along the way, it's great to look back and think that, those sort of rivalries, people just say, oh, was that the start? And you've just talked about David Rocastle starting it, or was it myself starting it? But I just think it was, and Brian mentioned it earlier, how good, or particularly later on, sort of more late, if you like, 90s, how good those two teams were. And it was, for me, it was the only two teams that were going to win the league. So those battles just intensified more and more. Even so, after I'd gone, it carried on with Arsene Wenger and Sir Alex, and then, with Martin Keown. So the history is there with different players, but the two teams are the same, because I think those two teams believed they were the best.
Yeah, I mean, judging by your reaction that day in at Highbury in '88, Brian, what Nigel said wasn't unlucky, old son.
I don't actually know what he said. So I don't recall. I mean, I'd like to recall.
So would I.
I would say, but I don't know what he said. The only thing is, the kind of thing for me is the horror of missing a penalty so badly, and the circumstances, and thinking of, what's he going to say when again? Because what happened at half time in that game was that he tore into people. Few people got hairdryers. I think the main culprit was Gordon Strachan, who got a real lashing at half time, and we were told to get out in the second half and sort it out. And I know we got back into the game because I scored the goal that we scored, and they get a chance to take it to almost likely to take it to a replay. And then you're disappointed in missing the penalty. You don't really need someone else coming and telling you, reminding you about it a few seconds later. But I just remember Nigel's face, really, which was probably jubilant, but kind of jubilant and gloating at the same kind of thing. And it was like, thanks, and leave it out. I don't really need this, because I'm thinking I'm going to get my arse toasted when I get back into this dressing room. And at the time, I don't know what Jaws was like as a manager, Nigel, but you're sort of thinking that, having seen the different pace of what Fergie was like, it was like you considered quite often, and I used to consider quite often, I'm never going to play for this team again. That's me done, because that's it. It could be finished. It could be like that. Go into that dressing room, it could easily turn around and say, "You'll never play for this football club again," and it would be, maybe most of the times that would be correct. So.
I think there were some United fans after you blazed that penalty over the bar that would have been quite happy if you'd never played again. But obviously, I don't mean that in hindsight. Obviously we don't. But in the heat of the moment, it was a tough one to take.
It was tough, but it's just these things happen. I mean, sometimes you do things, on the pitch later on that you're not proud of. I played in a game for Celtic against Hibs, and I was probably 19, 20 again, full of inexperience, I suppose, and naivety when it comes to certain things. And I remember that a senior player, a player who played for the very highest level of football, scoring an own goal, and I went over and rubbed. He's sitting on the ground. He's one of those ones you slide in and he's sitting on the ground disconsolate because he's knocked past his own goalkeeper. And I went over and rubbed my hand on his hair, right, and quite, you can imagine, he sprang up faster than he'd probably sprang up for many years and chased me up the pitch, and then for several games after that, which I suppose I was fortuitous in that he came to the end of his career, probably within a few games after that. But there was another couple of occasions where we were playing against each other, and he was trying his best to leave his mark on me, But I was either again lucky in the games or not, because it was my colleague that he caught, more times. But it was, and it took me a little while to. It's when I was doing it at the time, I knew that I shouldn't be doing it, but I just I couldn't stop myself, So, and then as I'm saying, these things happen, but it's nice to be. One of the things he was saying about the history and all the different things about it, when I use things to talk about my career now, Nigel, those two things I mention all the time. I say, well, that's what people remember. They don't remember. Well, not them saying they don't remember, but certain things is in the two events was the hitting the penalty over the bar, which I'm so pleased about with Bruno's miss 2 weeks ago, because that's got to be worse than mine. And it was at home. And it was at home.
It was much worse.
And you can see loads and loads of different views of it from loads of people's different video cameras and different things like that. So I was quite happy about that.
Did you think that when you missed the penalty? Obviously, there were a lot of things going through your mind, but I doubt very much you thought that 30 years on, people would still be talking about it.
No, well, you don't, do you? And then the same kind of thing happened when the next one was, and this is when you learn different things about the incident at Old Trafford when we were all involved, but we weren't all involved because Spunky, David Seaman, wasn't involved because he was in his goal and couldn't be asked.
Just laughing.
He's laying against the post, whatever, But what I only found out recently, Nigel, though, was that Clayton Blackmore didn't get involved either.
Oh, okay.
So he's confessed. He went, no, I wasn't involved. I said, why would you tell anybody that you weren't involved? Because nobody had noticed it, because everybody said it was a 21-man brawl, but it wasn't now. He's confessed to being the only one that didn't get involved. Didn't get involved. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that moment, because it is 31 years ago. So let's fast forward to October 20th, 1990, and what subsequently became known as the Battle of Old Trafford, the first Battle of Old Trafford. But for most of us, the Battle.
I think you said that one before that. You're saying 87. That was
that was a battle, but
that was like all the way through the game. This is probably just
it was just
one isolated.
It
was the one event. But it lasted.
It was, and like you say,
the time, So.
Like you say, the 87 one, it just went on throughout the match. But this one, I mean, this game, a disputed first half. Anders Limpar goal was given by Keith Hackett, who was sure the ball across the line, even though even now I'm not sure it did. And then everything kicked off in the second half with you two in the middle of it.
Look at this. This is disgraceful. It's a free-for-all. And how will the referee be able to sort it all out? Alec Ferguson has had to come from the bench to try and intervene to restore some order. David Rocastle was sent off playing here back in 1987 in just such a similar skirmish. Winterburn is cautioned, and McClare was lashing out, and the ball was the last thing on his mind, and Nigel Winterburn did well to get up from that.
Let's treat this as your disciplinary hearing, maybe, and let's have both sides of the story.
I don't know whether we were in the middle of it, because my recollection was I think I made the a tackle on Dennis. And then from what I can remember is I made the tackle, and then obviously you could come in with your studs raised, and my foot went straight across the top of the ball, and I think hit him in the shin. So I was on the floor, and then I remember getting a good little couple of kicks in the back from somebody, and I was lying down, and then everybody else was sort of piling in. I always call it handbags, a bit of pushing, a bit of shoving, and then the FA become involved. But George Graham always used to say to us, don't leave anybody on their own. Make it difficult for the referee to make a decision. So he said, if one player's in trouble, everybody gather round. And so it's like everybody, and I suppose with the the little bit of a history as well before that with United and Arsenal, just that one scene it only needed something very, very small to spark it off again. But I don't really know what happened after that, and I haven't watched it again. But my recollection was of the tackle, and then two. I think it was certainly it could have been one player, could have been two, but I definitely got two kicks in the back.
Well, they were definitely from Brian. If you look at the video, it was definitely.
Well, there you go. He got his own back. So
the thing is, you get sometimes like then that one in particular, and it didn't have to be very often because I'm pretty mild mannered and offensive, both on and off the pitch. But I just got into the red zone, and you made the tackle that I thought was unfair. And you were just lying there, and I just completely lost it. And I kicked you not once but twice. Probably the fastest I've ever kicked anybody. Fastest I've ever moved my feet, right? Ever moved my feet. And the thing that you said about what I credit both sides was that Fergie used to say you should be happy he's playing today, and I'm happy he's playing today, because if anything happens, you'll be at your shoulder. And quite quickly, straight after that, everybody piled in. Now, Michael Thomas had me by the throat. He's got his hand strangling me, and Tony Adams is over his shoulder trying to grab me. And other people are piling in, and then I don't know Anders Limper. I don't know anything about him, but what he did was he came round behind me and punched me in the side of the head.
See, I did.
Punched me in the side of the head.
All this while Nigel's lying on the floor still.
No, he's lying down there somewhere. Like,
I think I found it. I think
the safest place to be is to stay lying on the pitch.
It's the safest place to be at that time. What I'd done is I didn't want to get in any more trouble or be blamed for anything else. And then I thought the best place to do was lie there. So, but I didn't actually know that Anders had done that, and it's not really. Yeah, he's quite mild-mannered.
Well, didn't you get a couple of stitches on the back of your head?
I'll tell you what happens with that. So Anders punches me and kind of sneaks away. But Paul Ince, who you work with at Blackburn, spotted him. And then started to chase after him. But it was like in the playground, when you're dropping your left shoulder and dropping your right shoulder, trying not to get caught. And Ince eventually caught him by the dugouts. And they still had fences around the pitches then. And he's got Anders on the ash track, as it was then, by the throat, ready to punch him, but he didn't punch him. And then it kind of cooled down, and cooled down, didn't it? And then Keith Hackett, who had just watched it, let it run its course, and you got booked. And but I thought to myself, I've never been sent off at any level of football. Been booked a few times, but never sent off. I thought, this has got to be it now. We've got to be a red card for that. That's very, very bad. And they were waiting for it, and then I don't know if you'd seen Anders punching me, but you're thinking there's going to be a couple of red cards here. This is again, I'm going to get slaughtered by the manager for being involved in something. And Keith just stopped it, called you or booked you, and that was it. And I went to the side of the pitch because of blood running down the side of my face. I think he might have sent me to say good, and I got two stitches at me, and that was it. Well, that was it from that point of view. Then when I went home, like I said, my people were saying to me, "What were you doing? What possessed you?" I don't know. I have a clue. And I went.
Just getting your own back. I mean,
I went to training the next day, and I went to the training ground the next day on a Sunday. And I don't know. I think we might have been in anyway. I'm not sure. I drove in anyway, and the manager was always in, and he was there with Archie Knox, who was also at Blackburn when you were there. And I just knocked the door, shitting myself basically that again this could be my career for Manchester United finished, right, because of this behaviour. And also the potential consequences, So I just knocked the door, and he's, come in, and I opened the door, and I went in, and Archie Knox is pissing himself laughing. He's howling laughing. He manages to try to be serious, and he's crying laughing. I was like, what the fuck possessed you? I'm like, I don't know. I says, listen, you're going to have to find me. Yeah, you're getting fined. That's a certainty. You're definitely getting fined. But certainly, I could have been called up in front of the FA on a charge but that never happened. Both teams got
points,
penalty points, but you lot, because you were obviously a lot worse behaved than us because you'd been involved in another incident, not you particularly, but your teammates involved in another incident. Well, what I liked about both teams, and I mean, all the way through, is they were ready to be at your shoulder and mine were ready to be at my shoulder. And I'm not so sure. That's one of the things when I'm looking at football now. I'm not so sure there would be. So all those lads that were drinking beer, that's a different thing. You know, it's a totally different thing. You're getting away with something. But on that pitch, they showed quite clearly that they were going to be there.
No,
exactly the same way Alex Ferguson's players. You know?
Yeah, exactly the same. I mean, George always used to say, like, be together. But I think that, you know, people used to talk about the drinking culture at Arsenal, but I used to say, you know, I don't know whether it was any different when I played anywhere else at that period of time. It just seemed to be a thing that was accepted. But what that did is, you know, a lot of us used to go out to together quite regular. And I think that gave us a great camaraderie. So, like, when we went onto the pitch as well, if anything happened, along with those lines from George, like, make sure you're all in there, is that really give us that strong bond to come together. Now, people would say today, oh, you know, that's totally out of order. But you're talking about a completely different era when you could get away with things that you just simply couldn't do now. But yeah, that togetherness was within the team was absolutely sensational, and you knew whoever it would be, if something happened, then, you know, most of the other guys were right there behind you, trying to help you out.
So do you think things like that galvanised you? I mean, because you both ended up winning trophies that season. I mean, despite being deducted 2 points, Arsenal went on and won the league. And then United obviously won the Cup Winners' Cup in Rotterdam. I just wonder whether that was a sort of pivotal moment in the season for both managers. I mean, what was George's reaction to
we actually had a meeting, you know, and I think he felt quite aggrieved that we'd been docked points. And he just said, look, not only, you know, not everyone's going to be after you, the media. He just said, we just got to stick together and, you know, continue to do exactly as you've done before, you know, because I think he knew then that he had a team that was really bonded together. So he was just like, just batten the hatches down. Don't say anything to anybody. But if it happens again, it happens again, because, you know, we're all in it. We're all in it together. And obviously he would spin a different line to the media as he needed to be. But I think he knew that if there was another scenario happen within a game, then the same thing basically would happen again.
It's all right with Brian.
So speaking of pints, like you did earlier, you two played in an era where both teams would play hard on the field and off the field as well. The drinking culture was pretty hard at both Arsenal and United. Is all that stuff overplayed, or was it a case of, you know, I mean, I doubt very much you went for did you go for a pint after the match in the players' lounge that day, or did you keep yourself?
You know what? I can't remember, but most of our players always used to go into the away team's players' lounge for drinks. I can't remember on that occasion, but yeah, I mean, we were if you just talked about Arsenal and drinking, obviously it's slightly different to what people make out, because if we had a midweek game, we weren't out. We wouldn't go out on most of our nights out were always a Tuesday, or because what George used to like to do is if we didn't have a game, we'd train at Highbury. We'd do a lot of running up the terraces at the foot to start with, and then round the pitch, and then we'd go into the gym and do a 5 or 6-a-side competition, and then we were finished by 12 o'clock. And most of the lads then would be ready. The taxis would be ordered, and we'd all be off heading out into London. And then, you know, a lot of the guys were going. We usually go out for a meal to start with, a couple of drinks, and then everybody could disperse whenever they wanted to. But there was always a hardcore, let's say, that weren't getting in until 5 or 6 in the following morning. But most of the lads went, and you had, you know, you drank what you want. You went where you wanted to go. But yeah, there was that culture there.
It was famously a Tuesday club or Tuesday?
Yeah, well, yeah, they used to it got labelled the Tuesday club because it was every Tuesday, because if we didn't have a game, we trained at Highbury on a Tuesday, and then we had the Wednesday off. So obviously people started to name it the Tuesday club. It could have been any time because it was from about 12 o'clock onwards. So you could name it whatever you want. But yeah, but as I said to you before, I'm sure that other clubs were no different at that period of time, because I just feel it as if it was different at other clubs, then we would have probably put ourselves at a bit more of a disadvantage. And I'm sure Brian will tell you that there was some big drinkers at United, as well as a lot of other clubs.
Yeah, you had something similar at United, didn't you, Brian? A midweek get together.
Well, we didn't. We would have a similar thing for a particular reason. You know, that we would be going out to try and solve a problem. With the exact same scenario, we'd go in the morning and get a very, very physical session, both outdoors and probably in the gym. And then we were encouraged to go out for that reason, to sit there, because the first part of our set little thing would be where we were critical of each other, and we were expected to be critical and supportive of each other at the same time. For the first hour or so, we got out whatever shit we needed to get out about whatever problems we may have had, and as soon as that was, we got out, it was nothing personal. It was just a matter of how can we improve as a team, and this is what we think, and everybody with the opportunity to say what they wanted to say. And after that period of time was over, that was it. It was put away, and exactly the same sort of thing. You sit and have a laugh and a joke, and the people who wanted to go home because they wanted to go home and see their families, or people who wanted to stay out, or indeed use it as an excuse to stay out, would stay out, and we were off the next day, and then we were all at it. You know, we were all fully focused on the training on the Wednesday, with regards to whatever game we're going to play at the weekend. But we didn't do it every week, and we wouldn't be doing it, and they couldn't do it every week either, because part of the Manchester United and Arsenal's success was you ended up playing a lot more games. You know, when they first came down, there was no European football. From that season on, there was European football, and there was European football every season, almost every season since, for both clubs. So those events would have become scarcer and scarcer. And it was all, the drinking was all thing, but it wasn't like everybody had the same kind of rules and regulations, you know, so that as far as there wasn't any kind of thing written down in the, I think there was at United where it was said that you weren't allowed to go out 48 hours before the game, but I think Fergie changed that so that he could discipline in whatever way he wanted to do. So if he felt like he'd heard that somebody had been out on a Wednesday night, then he wanted to be able to decide that was contrary to what he thought was right for a professional footballer at his club. You know, up before that, it was actually written in. So and everybody abided by it, certainly by the 48-hour thing. You know, nobody would be out. Well, certainly, apart from the ones who have been noted to have ended up had a problem with drink, was that we were all at the appropriate time. You would go out and you would drink what you were capable of drinking, really, you know.
I'm just thinking that obviously
what you enjoyed, not capable of drinking, sorry. You drank what you enjoyed to drink. I think that was the main thing for most players, you know. Go out and have a few drinks, enjoy the beer if you like to have a beer, but the main part of it was the banter and the piss taking, really, and the joking and all that kind of thing. That was the main aspect of that experience.
I'm just thinking that both Ferguson and Wenger arrived at the respective clubs at times when drinking was pretty hard. I mean, obviously 6 when United were famed for their drinking ability, and obviously Wenger turned up in the mid-90s after Arsenal had a bit of a reputation. You know, how did they go about sort of changing that mentality? I mean, did they was it ruling with an iron fist, or was
I think the mentality is to do with being successful, isn't it? So if you're successful, successful as individuals and mainly successful as a team, you're going to evaluate everything that is involved in within how that team becomes a team. Maybe they thought that people will be looking and say, well, actually, this Tuesday thing, if we can just get them to curb it a little bit, then you know that what seems to come out of it is a strong bond between them as a team and in the dressing room, and most importantly on the pitch. I think when if you're performing, that's the only thing that matters. Nigel played for Arsenal for over a decade. We played professional football for 20 years. Clearly, whatever he was doing every day and what he was doing at other times, he was able to perform at a level that people continued to want to choose him to be the number one choice in their team at left back. And I think that was the case we thought would be the case with all players. Any player that then, for whatever reason, wasn't performing to that level, or yet wants to perform that level, whether it's down to lifestyle or whether it's down to mortality in the sense that they were just that little bit older, then the managers were very, very good at working that out quickly or even very much in advance and be ready there for somebody to be either to be put in as a direct replacement or be gradually be put in. So and Nigel made a very good point there. If there was, I think that was just part of, well, certainly professional football at that particular time, because you had the time to do it and the freedom to do it, and it was an escape from that pressure of being a professional football player. And it would be accepted up to a point as long as you're performing. When you stop performing, that's when things would change.
Yeah.
So, I mean, was it the same with Wenger, Nigel? I mean, did he?
I think it was more education. Obviously, he knew about the culture, but Arsene Wenger was more about education. Really, he did shut the players' bar straight after a game. It wasn't open, but he was very, very big, Arsene Wenger, on sort of dietary requirements. But his big thing was like after games, he wanted, really, particularly away games, but he wanted players on the coach as quick as possible. He wanted you eating and drinking in terms of rehydration. So I think his tactic was more a case of educating the players into a certainly a slightly different lifestyle, if you want. And I think when Arsene Wenger came in, I've said on many, many occasions, his training sessions, just the way that he spoke to you and sort of respected you as a person, you couldn't help but fall in line and want to be part of what Arsene Wenger was trying to achieve at that period in time. So I think overall, as I said, I think it was education more than ruling with an iron fist, because Arsene Wenger didn't like any confrontation. Probably apart from with Sir Alex, that was probably the only one that he's ever had. But he did literally, if he left you out the team for a rest, he just named the team, but he wouldn't look at you. He's just as if you were just invisible, and he certainly wouldn't want you making eye contact to go and say, "Well, why have you left me out?" Or, "What are you doing?" Or he may tell you the day before, "I'm going to give you a rest, and then I don't even want you at the game, and then I want to see you again on Monday morning." But Arsene Wenger was all, as everyone's talked about, was education in terms of dietary requirements and just replenishing, particularly after games.
What would either of you think of being managed by the other one's bosses? Obviously, you both played under some of the most successful and charismatic managers there were throughout the 80s, 90s and 2000s. So, Nigel, I'll come to you first. How do you think you would have thrived under Alex Ferguson?
Well, I'd like to think I did. And I've always said it's one manager I'd have loved to have played under. Because in a way, I think he, I don't know, but the stories you hear, it was a little bit like George Graham, where he lost his temper if things were not going well. He'd pick on individual players, maybe for a response to see how you reacted. But as I've said to you all along, from mid or even late 90s through to 04, there were only two teams Man United and Arsenal, and that rivalry intensified. So I think if you could switch it and just be part of each in those dressing rooms, you get a real insight. I know what Arsene Wenger was like. He was very calm and calculated most of the time, but I used to love his interviews when Sir Alex was there, because that's when he seemed to lose his cool. But yeah, I'd have loved to have also, on the flip side, I'd have loved to have been in that dressing room when Sir Alex was giving his team talks, about us, or vice versa, when things weren't going so well, as Brian talked about what he was like at halftime. Was it did he rule that little bit of fear of, you might not play for me again, which is what it sounds like. But Arsene Wenger was completely the opposite. Even if we were playing poorly, he never ever came in the dressing room and shouted at the players at all. It was I've never seen anything like it. It was quite incredible.
And Choccy, how would you have fancied playing for either George Graham or Arsene Wenger? And I don't mean just actually playing. I mean, some of the stuff you've admitted on here about playing the practical jokes and winding Fergie up. How do you think you would have got away with it with the two Arsenal managers?
Well, I don't think it was a problem for George Graham, because George Graham actually loved me as a player. I know that he really liked me as a player, so that was a good. I mean, one time I played for George Graham was in Bobby Moore's testimonial game at Tupton Park, and he picked me to be the captain of the team in the first half. So I know that he liked me as a player, and I think he'd have been fine because he's brought up only a couple of miles away from where I was when he's just outside Coatbridge. Arsene Wenger, that'd be the one thing I think I'd love to have played for him, because I think of like the way that he played the game, and I like the thinking behind him, and always listening to I'm always happy to hear if you're talking about the education part of it. I'm always happy to be convinced that was. I think that Wenger had the knowledge and experience to be able to convince you this is the right way to be going and doing things. Not quite so sure about the ban the chocolate thing. But I'm sure that he would be able to convince you.
He banned everything, not only chocolate, sugar in tea and everything. He was just like,
that was the problem for me at times. Because I stopped taking sugar in my tea when my first child was born, because we started to eat the same things that they were eating. So I realised that too much sugar, too much salt and all that wasn't very good. So actually I ended up with a reasonable athletic diet, because I was thinking about the welfare of my children, not because I was trying to be a better professional football player. I'm not sure that Arsene would let me away with the sense of humour bit and the mischievous bit. I don't know. I mean, Nigel knows him better. I mean, I think that would be one of the things he would have found difficult to comprehend. But I think that one of the benefits for all those managers involved, and where I think Nigel and I had an advantage, is that we were always available. We were very, very, very rarely injured, and because we got away with it, very rarely suspended as well. But I think they're the things. The first thing that managers. I think that's where. What a lot of the analysis is done now is about how many times are these players, we're looking to be spending a lot of money both at Arsenal and Manchester United. What they're going to get out of that? How often have they shown that they're going to be fit enough to be selected? It's down to all sorts of different other factors.
I think also, Brian, as well, it's consistency, isn't it? A manager when he puts you in, he wants you to be consistent, knowing that probably each week you're going to be 7 out of 10 and better. I think that's and you're, like you say, you are there and available week in, week out, and the manager basically has got that trust in that player. That's how I felt under both managers, that they actually trusted me to do the job that I was asked to do.
I would agree with that, yeah. So he'd be part of sometimes in part of Ferguson's team talks, he would be saying that, exactly that. If you all play 6 out of 10, you win the game today at home. If you play 7 out of 10, then you might win by a couple. If a few are playing 7 and you got a few at 8 and maybe 1 at 9, you'll win the game comfortably. And if you're all playing at a certain level, you'll win the game very, very easily. And that was, and as I say, that he got that and had that out of players for a long period of time. As I said, he knew what kind of performance you were going to get. An advantage for me was the number of games that I was playing, because I could play badly in loads of different positions, which I did. Which I did several times. I know you played a little bit at right back, Nigel, but I mean, I came on in the European game in Turin against Juventus on the left wing because he'd fallen out with Ryan Giggs at half time. Now, he wasn't expecting me to put in a Ryan Giggs type performance. He was just expecting me to not be shit, So that's against that's down to the trust part of it. Is exactly the same thing, trust you. He couldn't trust me off the pitch when he came to during training and all that, but on the pitch, I think he could trust me.
Montclair's mailbag, Montclair's mailbag, Montclair's mailbag.
I wouldn't be surprised if the postman's got a hernia this week, Matthew, because we've had a record amount of questions for the mailbag. So can you sift through that lot and pick out a couple of the best ones?
I hope there's something, Nigel.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we have had a lot. And I spent all week sifting through. I've just picked out a couple of the best ones because we could be here all night doing this. But, well, you never guess what. We've got one from Cumbrian Dave. And he says, obviously it shouldn't be forgotten that Arsenal were crowned champions in the May after the Battle of Old Trafford. And the day they played Manchester United at Highbury and won 3-1, the United players had to give the Arsenal players a guard of honour. And Cumbrian Dave wants to know both of your thoughts about giving and receiving guards of honour at the start of a match, and particularly, Brian, whether you attempted to stick your foot out and trip over any particular member of the Arsenal
saw this question on Twitter as well.
No, because I'll tell you what happened was when that particular game, it was on the 6th of May 1991, and I decided that I would go and make peace with Nigel before the game. I don't know if you remember, but it's for me, it's a terrible thing, particularly, and it's a tough thing to do, particularly in the circumstances of the rivalry. So tough thing to do there when everybody's in party mood, and we are there as Bank Holiday Monday, I think it was. We are there to do that kind of thing. They all come out with their champions T-shirts and all that kind of thing. It was tough. I think it's right that you do it, because I think that should be respectful to the best team, because the best team almost always wins the league. And I had decided that after that this nonsense between Nigel and I had to kind of stop. So I went up and said to him before the game, look, I think we just pack this in now. We shook hands. And as far as I remember, we never had any more incidents after that. We played in several games after that. And then Arsenal played really well too as well. It's another thing, that they played very well that night and were comfortable winners,
I remember that game because didn't United play a lot of kids in that game, because it was heading towards the Rotterdam final, wasn't it? So
yeah, and actually I had another thing as well, because my wife was 9 months pregnant, so I had said to her before, look, I don't need to go, and she says, no, you'll be fine, go to the game. So I went to the game, and that at half time I got a message to say that she'd gone into labour, so the second half of the game I was more concerned about getting back up the road, but I didn't get back up in time for the birth of Liam, so that's one of the whole kind of thing is a vivid memory for me because of all the things that happened within that day. But no, and I'm glad it worked out that way, because as I said, you should be given, and it gives you that more. For me, it was like more drive, thinking, I'd really love to be on the other side where these poor bastards have got to be cheering us on and clapping us onto the pitch, So it gives added an extra impetus, and of course, being at Highbury is a wonderful place to be in, particularly when they're all celebrating, So I love the away games. So
is it something you had to do, Nigel? I'm trying to think whether Arsenal would have done that back then.
I'm just trying to think whether we I can't actually remember having to a team winning the league against us on a specific day. I can't remember that. If I'm honest with you, I don't think it was. But
I can't think.
I mean, it's it was great for us because we'd we'd already won the league because I think Liverpool drew with Nottingham Forest early on, and our game was a later game. I think it might have been a 5:30 kickoff.
Yeah, it was Easter Monday or bank holiday.
So we'd already won the league, and Brian was right. We came out with hats and scarves on and t-shirts, and it's great, isn't it? Because as I said to you, that rivalry is it wasn't really in full bloom then, because I think with later on it got more intensified, if you like, in terms of how good the two teams were. But I think it's just a sense of pride knowing that you are the champions when you get a guard of honour like that. I could have fully understood if United had stayed in the dressing room or been out on the pitch already, but it just shows a little bit of quality for me, although that rivalry was still there at the time.
It's a strange tradition, isn't it? It's one of those ones that seems to have come about more in recent years, but I mean, it must have gone back through the decades, but it just seems to be an issue more these days. It's whether our team's going to give them. I mean, last season Rangers and Celtic didn't do it, or
Celtic and Rangers may be slightly different, but I just think Premier League, I don't see why teams wouldn't, out of respect, give a guard of honour if it's something that I had to do. And now you're making me think, because I'm going to go back and get the books out later and have a look, see if I did do anything like it. But I think I think out of respect, then I'd be quite happy to do that.
Yeah, fair enough. Talking of winning titles, Lone Star Trader asked Nigel, was your greatest night in football that Friday night at Anfield in 1989? And I get the feeling it was for him, because he says, as a 13-year-old kid, I don't think I've ever cheered a non-United goal more in my life. I mean, that's got to be up there, hasn't it, in terms of your achievements?
Yeah, that's what it's my first sort of winning trophy at Arsenal, and with the circumstances around it, the Hillsborough, the league being postponed. I think it was postponed for a couple of weeks. We should have won the league maybe 3 weeks before that. We drew with Wimbledon at home. I think we lost to Derby.
Yeah.
And then I remember listening to Liverpool West Ham in the week, because we played on a Friday night, but I think Liverpool played on the Tuesday night as well, because they were catching their games up. I think the final score was 5-1 against West Ham.
Yeah.
I remember switching that radio off with about 10 minutes to go, I think it was, thinking if they score again, 2 goals. Nobody really went to Anfield and won by 2 goals, but 3 would have been ridiculous. It was almost impossible. So, we took the flowers out before, the bouquet of flowers before, and then George Graham's speech was just as if he'd already watched the game. It was almost as if it was pre-recorded. At half-time, don't panic, score an early goal, second half. He thinks Liverpool will panic, won't know what to do. They like to attack. They like to keep the ball, move forward. He thinks they'll get caught, and exactly what they did. John Barnes should have took the ball right into the corner and booted it straight out of the stand, but that's not the Liverpool way. They want to score goals. We win the ball back, and then Mickey Thomas scores, right in the last few seconds. But in terms of how dramatic it was and everything that was built up in that season, I think it for me, it is the iconic moment that I remember. Each trophy, Brian will probably tell you, is completely different and memorable. But that one for me was the first one, and under the circumstances, it's something that you always remember and people will always talk about.
I'm just thinking, Mark, I probably don't need to ask you, being a big Evertonian, how you felt that night. Goes without saying. I just wonder, Brian, in terms of allegiances and what have you, I mean, I take it you remember watching that game that night, but I mean, as a United man then, did you have a sense of joy watching that, or were you impartial, or from a player's point of view?
No, you can never be impartial when it comes to games like that. I jumped up when Arsenal scored both goals. So I was happy for Liverpool had won enough by then, didn't they? It's time somebody else had a chance, didn't they? Yeah, I had a fondness for Arsenal as well, because I'd been on trial at Arsenal when I was like 14, 15-year-old kids, so I've enjoyed being down there as a young person, so it's always going to be the same way. And and if it'd been the other way around, you would very much expect the Liverpool fans to be jumping up if Arsenal had done such a thing, and done that on that night if the opponents had been Manchester United, So No, yeah, you very rarely you're impartial in any kind of event,
Yeah, and I think you've got to agree it's the greatest end to a league season ever.
No, I mean, for that, you sense for drama and everything about it comes down to the last game, comes down to that and the events in the game, because it was a cracking game of football as well. I mean, apart from the goals, it was
purely because both teams went for it. Like Nigel said, Liverpool didn't have to go for it, but they did, and that's what made it such a great game.
Yeah, and to finish that way and have so many incidents, like you say, you're sitting there watching it. When I'm watching the game, I think I was on Scotland duty at the time, when I think Pat Nevin and I were watching the game together, and you're just watching, oh, well, that's the game done now. Barnes got the ball, and he just has to take it, like Nigel says, just wind the clock down, and it's done, particularly when the ball was so far away from the Liverpool goal, and it just shows you how that it only takes a few seconds to score the goal, particularly. And you make even something like a player of the stature of John Barnes can make an error at that particular time in a game, and one end of the pitch to the other in such a swift moment. But I think you were up there as well, Nigel, weren't you? You were right up at.
Well, we played wing back, so I was on Mickey's left hand side, about 5 yards outside him, pretty much level with him, and he'd actually had a chance a few minutes before, very, very similar. He literally flicked it straight into Gobler's hands. And then when he went through again, Mickey is so calm and calculated. I think I knew that time that he was going to score, and I was literally off.
Were you not screaming for it? No, were you not screaming?
No, and I think I was also thinking, don't deflect that ball this way with an open goal with about 10 seconds to go. I don't want to be known as someone who's missed and given Arsenal a chance to win the league. So I was pretty pleased when Mickey scored. Let me tell you, that's why I ran the opposite way away from everybody else. I was like, "Cool, that was a relief."
Cool. Okay, gents, let's bring down the curtain on this episode. It was cool to get you both together after all these years to relive those battles between United and Arsenal, and even better that we're all parting on good terms this time. Nigel, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today. What are you up to these days?
Just really media work. So fair bit of work with Arsenal around, no coaching, but around Arsenal, particularly on match days. Some analysis for them as well, and then but basically media stuff. But I think I've said all along now since COVID's come in that you never know what's going to happen in life. So I'm not going to worry about whether too much work's coming in. I'm going to go out and enjoy myself, and just take it from there really, and try and enjoy family life as it whittles away from you very, very quickly when you get a bit older, but mainly a media side, but a lot of it around Arsenal.
Brilliant. Well, thanks again for coming on. Brian and Matthew, the same to you, pair. Thanks very much.
Always a pleasure. Very much, sir. It's been wonderful. Thank you, Nigel. That was great.
Cheers, Brian. Thank you very much. Enjoyed that. It's great to look back on some fond memories. I know some of the United faithful will still hate me, but as I said, it's those games were just sensational, and in a way, I wouldn't change anything, because I think it just added to that bit of spice. But when you look back, it wasn't much really. When you look at it, it was a bit more handbaggy stuff, wasn't it? Rather than, but
it still gets brought up all the time.
It still gets brought up all the time. It's a great talking point.
Yeah, it keeps you thinking, oh well, maybe I did achieve something in my life,
Well, I know for sure there's two things that people think I did wrong, so thank you very much, guys. Anyway,
thanks, you, Nigel. And finally, thanks to you guys for listening. We'll hopefully see you again soon. And in the meantime, don't forget to hit subscribe on your favoured podcast platform and follow us on Twitter at Brian McClare Pod. So cheerio.
Life with Brian. Life with Brian. Talking films or music. Life with Brian. Talking TV and food. Life with Brian. Talking trivia and exercise. Life with Brian. It's different every episode. Life with Brian. Talking politics and football. Life with Brian. It's different every episode. Life with Brian. Life with Brian.